In the 90s, the fashion world was obsessed with perfect beauty. Then came Miuccia Prada. She was a political radical who trained as a mime. Yes, a mime. The last person you'd expect to take over an old traditional luxury house. But Miuccia Prada didn't want to fit into fashion. She wanted to dismantle it. And in 1996, she sent out avocado green suits and clunky heels to the runway that critics called revolting. But while they were busy hating it, she was busy building an empire of the intellect. This is the story of how Ugly Chic won. In the late 70s, Miuccia Prada was the last person you'd expect to run a luxury house. A PhD in political science and a trained mime, she viewed fashion as frivolous. As the granddaughter of Prada's founder, Mario Prada, Miuccia inherited the family's fading luggage empire in 1978. She had no design training or experience, and she didn't change herself to fit the luxury mold. She changed what luxury meant. So, as an accidental designer who didn't know the rules, her lack of experience became her greatest asset. She wasn't looking for what was pretty, she was looking for what was interesting, and her first act of rebellion wasn't a dress. In the mid-80s, luxury meant one thing: conspicuous wealth. It was all heavy leather, gold hardware and logos. But Miuccia wasn't interested in status. She was interested in utility. While searching for a fabric that felt more modern than leather, she discovered Pocono, an industrial-grade nylon used by the Italian army for parachutes and military tents. Miuccia wanted to create sleek, durable handbags, and in 1984 launched the Vela backpack, and it left the fashion elite a little baffled. They didn't understand why anyone would pay luxury prices for a fabric that felt like a gym bag. But to Miuccia, that was exactly the point. The brand then successfully bridged the gap between function and fashion, evolving from practical backpacks to the mini hobo bags, a sleek shoulder bag that quickly became a must-have accessory in every early 2000s wardrobe. She had created a new kind of luxury, one that didn't need to shout. Miuccia had taken a humble material and made it more desirable than a leather handbag. However, the fabric also became a staple in the brand's apparel. For fall-winter 1994, nylon was extensively used in the clothing, by creating full dresses, skirts, jackets and vests from the same industrial material used for her backpacks. This was the core of the Prada identity. A strict, minimal discipline, it was an aesthetic defined by these lean silhouettes and a somber palette of navy, black and charcoal. It was a high-function uniform that felt both intellectual and invisible. She wasn't trying to be decorative. She was just stripping fashion back to its essential parts. But in 1996, she decided to pull a move that almost broke the fashion industry. She stopped looking at military tents and started looking at grandma's kitchen wallpaper. This was the birth of Ugly Chic, a collection so intentionally bad that it changed the definition of good forever. Miuccia once said, "Ugly is human," and titled the collection Banal, Eccentricity. She wanted to dismantle the sexy clichés that she felt restricted women. It was full of murky sludge greens, browns and patterns that looked like 1970s kitchen curtains and made them aspirational. And it definitely shocked people. But she was proving a point. True sophistication comes from the courage to be imperfect. If the clothes were the uniform, the shoes were the anchor. Miuccia Prada used footwear to ground her collections in a reality that was intentionally disciplined and architectural. While other houses were chasing the spindly heights of the supermodel era, Prada moved in a different direction. The 90s was defined by a sturdy block heel and an uncompromising square toe, but she also embraced the other extreme, introducing minimalist, flat sandals and slim T-bars that felt almost clinical in their simplicity. By the late 90s, Prada had become more than a brand. It was a feeling, largely defined by the lens of Glen Luchford. While the rest of the industry leaned into high glamour perfection, Luchford and Miuccia embraced cinematic realism. The result was a series of non-stories that felt less like ads and more like cinema. Look at this shot of Amber Valletta. It's dark, it's blurry, and she's not even looking at the camera. In fact, you can barely even see the clothes. And for any other brand, this would be a marketing failure. For Prada, it was a masterstroke. By making the images look like a mystery, Prada forced the viewer to lean in. You weren't just looking at a skirt. You were kind of wondering, where is she going? Why is she alone? What just happened? This was the brand's greatest hook. Rather than marketing the clothes themselves, Prada sold the intellectual mystery of the woman within them. As Miuccia was dismantling the rules at Prada, she realised she needed a different space for her more experimental and personal ideas. So in 1993, she launched Miu Miu. Named after her own childhood nickname, it wasn't a diffusion line or a cheaper version of the main house. She famously summed up the difference between the two by stating, "Prada is what I am. Miu Miu is what I would like to be." Miuccia wanted a personal playground without any commercial pressure. While Prada was about intellectual discipline and a uniform, Miu Miu was about a more rebellious, youthful spirit. We'll be diving deeper into the Miu Miu archive in a future video, but in the mid-90s the two labels worked in tandem, effectively reshaping the fashion world with Miuccia's specific brand of anti-glamour. We often discuss quiet luxury as if it were a modern invention, but Miuccia Prada was laying that very foundation 30 years ago. In a decade defined by overt, high glamour, she was staging a subtle rebellion. Miuccia wasn't interested in traditional, seductive imagery. Instead, she prioritised the inner world of the thinking woman. Prada in the 90s was an exercise in restraint and discipline. Miuccia designed for a woman already settled in her own identity. Someone for whom elegance wasn't a performance for others, but a quiet, intellectual comfort for herself. Ultimately, the reason 90s Prada remains so relevant is its focus on longevity. She proved that elegance doesn't always stem from a polished facade, but from a bit of intellectual grit. When you look at those archival pieces today, they don't feel like vintage relics. They read like a modern manifesto for dressing with intention. And I don't know about you, but I could definitely pull some of those 90s looks straight off the runway and easily wear them tomorrow. Whether it's the clean lines of the nylon skirts or those perfectly architectural block heels, these pieces haven't aged a day. They still offer that same quiet confidence they did 30 years ago. In a world that's constantly chasing the next trend, the Prada archive remains the ultimate quiet alternative. It's a reminder that true style isn't about being seen, it's about being understood.